The world is bright, save your sight. That's the theme for this year's World Glaucoma Awareness Week. It happens annually from the 6th to the 12th of March. And we have with us this morning on the Now Morning Show, Dr. Badasee, who's going to share with us a bit more about glaucoma. Good morning, Doctor. How are you?
Hi, good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me on today.
Thanks for being with us this morning. Now, Doctor, we want to jump straight into this conversation because, if I'm not mistaken, this is a preventable cause of blindness. But once it happens, it's irreversible. So can you just break down for us what exactly is glaucoma?
So glaucoma is basically a group of eye conditions that damage the optic nerve in the eye. And the optic nerve carries the signal from the eye to the brain. So any damage to the optic nerve will have some severe consequences if left untreated over time in terms of vision. And the damage is often caused by high intraocular pressures, as the term we use, but it's basically just high pressures in the eye. So that's what happens in glaucoma. There is damage to the optic nerve, and it's usually because of high pressures in the eye.
Okay. And what are these symptoms of glaucoma, Doctor?
So initially, in the early stages, there is no symptoms. So we actually call it the silent teeth. So there is damage that is ongoing and you're not knowing. But if damage does progress, you can end up having blindness. But some other symptoms of other types of glaucoma as well. You can have symptoms such as headaches, blurred vision, severe eye pain, rainbows or halos around lights, nausea, and as well as vomiting. But these symptoms are common. The main symptoms usually is no symptom. But like I said, as it progresses, you can end up with blurred vision and also blindness.
So one of the things that you mentioned just there with no symptoms. So how do we test and what do we do to just check and see whether or not we have it? Because some of the symptoms you mentioned as well, such as like nausea, vomiting, those are things that can be easily correlated to another type of sickness. So how would you guide us as a nation to check and see whether or not we have it?
So in glaucoma, like most other diseases, we can screen for it. There is screening systems that are available locally for glaucoma. And usually we advise people at a certain age to get their eye checks. And if the eyes are checked and we see some signs of glaucoma, we can screen for them using something called a glaucoma risk assessment. Basically, what we do is we put you on a machine that scans the optic nerve to see the health of it. We also do some field testing, and then we also check the pressure of the eye with a special machine. And then we can also do testing such as pachymetry, which measures the thickness of the cornea. Also, it's always wise if there's someone in the family that has glaucoma, say a mom or a dad or a sibling, it's always wise to get an eye check and also be screened for glaucoma.
Okay, wonderful. Now, you mentioned about testing, but what age do you think we should start to test our vision in light of glaucoma?
Well, the onset of glaucoma is usually around 60 years old of age. But with your regular eye checks, we can see the signs of glaucoma earlier and test it earlier, usually around 50 years of age. But if you do have a family history, a strong family history of glaucoma, it's always wise to have an earlier check at an earlier age, just to make sure.
Let's just say that we get glaucoma now. What treatment options do we have moving forward to see whether or not we can possibly stop the progression of it?
Correct, yeah. So glaucoma, if there's damage due to glaucoma of the optic nerve, there is no cure to reverse it. But there is treatment available to prevent the progression, like you rightly said. And there are several types of treatment. So the first and the main line, the first line treatment is eye drops. And what these eye drops, they aim to do is to lower the pressures in the eye so that the optic nerve isn't further damaged. But there's also some new laser treatment as well that tends to open up the drainage systems in the eye to release the pressure of the eye. And then if all else fails, there's also surgery that we can do for this condition.
Okay, so you just mentioned three things, and for those who don't know, it could possibly sound a little bit painful. So this procedure that you just mentioned, from the laser to the cutting and the draining of the eye, is it painful or is it painless? And what's the recovery period like?
No, it's painless. So the laser treatment is a one-day procedure, an in-clinic procedure as well. And it usually takes around 8 minutes, less than 10 minutes definitely. And there is no pain, no pain towards it. And recovery period is same day. There is no adverse side effects. However,
Okay.
well, with surgery, there may be a bit of discomfort, but no pain. And we manage it very well. And recovery period is usually, if it gets to surgery, is usually around 3 weeks.
Okay, so Dr. Badasee, one of the things that I was looking up a bit about glaucoma, and in the statistics it was mentioned that roughly 50% of those who actually suffer from it aren't aware that they have it, and then until it's too late. Now, also they mentioned that in developing countries, as ourselves, the rates are higher. So do you have any tips for us to prevent this from happening in its tracks?
Yeah, so one of the main tips is, of course, if you have any medical conditions or any other problems, with the eye, you should always go and get your annual or a first time checked, by an ophthalmologist to see if there's any risk factors for you developing glaucoma, and then we can test the optic nerve and see if there's any damage and possibly start on treatment. Also very important is, if you do have a family history or a strong family history of glaucoma, meaning your mom, your dad, or your sibling has any conditions like glaucoma, it's always advised to get these tests done earlier.
Okay, and for those who are interested, and just for reference, what would the cost be like to get checkups, to possibly have surgery? What budget would you say we need to look towards, possibly from minimal to the highest?
Well, for minimal, first of all, to get tested for glaucoma, with the glaucoma risk assessment, it's usually around $800. However, at CVRS, we have something called a subsidized pricing, and you can get 40% off that testing. And if needed, treatment with eye drops. There are available eye drops. Usually the range of $150 to $200, $300 around there. And then, well, with the laser and surgery, it all varies, So it's best to get tested first and then make a decision and then advise patients on costing and all of those things.
Agreed. It definitely is necessary to do that, because the last we would want is somebody to come and say, well, I watched our morning show and they said that it costs this much. But of course, every case is different. Dr. Badasee, before we wrap today's conversation, do you have any words for Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah, so what I like to end up by saying is, your eye is very important, one of the most important sense that you have. So you should take care of it, definitely take care of it. If you do have a family history of any eye condition or glaucoma, please, get it checked, get a routine checkup, so you can pick up these things earlier and screen for them and start treatment if necessary. And that'll be my main message to everyone.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you so much, Dr. Vikash Badasee from Trinidad Eye Hospital. Hoping that you have a bright week. It's only Monday, and looking forward to chatting with you again soon.
All right. Thank you very much again for having me.